There's a lot of attention on Vice President Biden's Moonshot, which involves making changes at FDA. You've been interested in the Moonshot and device safety. Can we talk about that? What do you think of it?
I think the Vice President has appropriately brought focus to the issue of cancer, where we are, funding for research, the therapies, the absolute opportunity, the great advancements we've made in the opportunity to save lives and help families. So the focus at the highest levels of the federal government have been important. We need to provide the funding, and that is born out of some personal experience in the Biden family. Gives it heart as well. Already was the right thing to do, and so this is an issue. Joe Biden, longtime member of the United States Senate, he knows how to get things done in the United States Senate. He's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. There's no partisanship in the interest of helping families and curing cancer, but the moonshot that he's brought the focus to and expressed such an interest in, I think is really an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to come together around solutions in the Congress. And so I think it's great what he's doing. I'm fully prepared to work with him wherever we can. On his announcement, my office wrote a letter to him asking that in the push forward around all these areas of research and development and funding, and that we not lose sight on some of the issues that I'm working on in my particular office, which is the safety of medical devices and the potential that in the race for the cure, that we not lose sight of the fact that some devices could, while well-intentioned, could do some harm. And some devices, as a matter of fact, have spread cancer in women. And I'd like him to take a look at that.
So what do you think of the new FDA Oncology Center of Excellence? It's supposed to also bring devices related to oncology under review by people with expertise with cancer. How can this center at FDA help improve device safety?
Well, so I think it's a great idea. The FDA, like so many other federal agencies, is a big bureaucracy. And with bureaucracies come potential challenges. They spend a lot of money, they have to manage a lot of people and a lot of projects at the same time. And when you're dealing with high achievers, with a lot of pressure to come up with cures and to keep people safe at the same time, you're dealing with really smart people, they're all very protective of their areas. So we understand that. I've found, when we reach out, sometimes it can be frustrating because it can take a long time to get an answer to a simple question. I guess that means there are levels of bureaucracy through which the letters have to pass. But I've also found some individual members and directors responsive in coming to the office to talk to us. But to your specific question, to have a Center for Excellence within the FDA with a specific focus across all divisions or all departments, that's a good thing. So I wish him well.
Do you think a device such as the morcellator should come under the Cancer Center's jurisdiction, given its cancer risk?
I do. This is not just a simple, device. As it turns out, it was a device that was approved through a expedited approval process based upon the fact that it was a variation on something else that had been approved. So it went through pretty quickly. I guess the assumption is without a lot of oversight or testing or data. As it turns out, some of the tumors that this device was designed to remove, a subset of those tumors are cancerous. And the blades of the device in those cases is spreading cancerous tissue through the body of a woman and immediately upstaging their cancer from perhaps stage 1 to stage 4. An awful result from the use of a device. And if the device was approved on an expedited basis without a specific expertise in the area of oncology or cancer detection treatment, that would not be good for the FDA. So I would encourage them to, fully fund the Center for Excellence. It's a good idea, and I think it will save lives.
How do you get involved in this issue? Which patients and families did you talk to, and actually who have you seen pass away?
The first time I heard the name laparoscopic power morcellator was about 2 years ago. Met with a couple of constituents of mine who I met by chance in a holiday parade in Pennsylvania. Dr. Amy Reed is a native, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. She had been around the country earning her medical doctorate degree, her PhD. She was teaching, she was practicing. Her husband as well, an MD, PhD in some of the great hospitals in our country. And as it turns out, through the use of the laparoscopic power morcellator, her cancer was upstaged. And they, Human and Amy, are the parents of 6 young children who live in the same community where Kathy, my wife, and I are raising our 6 children. So I sat with them and I listened to the story, and I learned a lot. I don't have a specific background at all in medicine, but I've been involved with hospitals basically my whole life, from in high school when I worked in a hospital to serving on the boards of hospitals, and recently been a cancer patient in a couple of hospitals in my district. And so it is impossible to listen to the kind of story that I heard from Dr. Norchasm and Dr. Reed about how the federal government that they relied upon to protect them as she was perhaps being diagnosed and treated, how the very systems that were supposed to protect the patient and protect them specifically did not perform, fell down, and actually harmed them. So that was the first time I heard of the device, and I promised Dr. Amy Reed I would do whatever I could to help, to bring light to the problem, to fully review the 510K process at the FDA to see where it's going wrong and amend it where appropriate, fix it, make it better. And during the course of the 2 years that I've known Dr. Reed and Dr. Norchasm, they have introduced me to many other families of women who have been harmed by the power morcellator. Some of those women have passed away. Others are still with us. All of those families are working together to make sure that the harm that was occasioned upon them does not occur to other women. During the course of all that, they introduced me to another medical device, the eSure medical device, which is a nickel coil, which is a permanent birth control device. And as well, these are another subset of women in our country who are harmed by a device that was supposed to help them. And so when you take it all together, it's a body of work that my staff has been putting a lot of time in, and we think it's important work, and we're dedicated to making a difference.
From your work on this over the past 2 years, a year and a half, what do you think is the root problem of patient harm from medical devices?
The root problem?
Root cause.
The cause?
Problem? Yeah.
Well, it's a large bureaucracy, well-intentioned, designed to guarantee the safety and the efficacy of medical devices. In most cases, I believe they do a good job and get it right. But like anything in life, in some cases there are going to be mistakes, things are going to slip through. Procedures need to be updated and refined and improved. And so I think part of the problem at the FDA is if the bureaucracy is so big they're not responsive, when people bring concerns to them, those concerns are not being heard or not being dealt with. That's a problem in the bureaucracy itself.
Right.
At the same time, there are problems in the law. So problems in the agency and the bureaucracy. There are also problems in the law. One example in the pre-market approval process for devices that go through a more rigorous approval process, federal courts in the United States have construed federal statutes to say that women who have been harmed by devices are not permitted to go to court to seek redress for the damages that were caused to them. That's not just wrong from a civil rights point of view. It's not just wrong because we're denying women the right to be able to get somebody to pay for the damages that were caused to them, or at least even the right to go into the front door of the courthouse to ask for it. But it also, in a strange sort of way, corrupts the free market system of how medical device manufacturers and researchers and developers, how they look at the devices that are currently on the shelf and whether they need to be improved or maybe even taken off the shelf. So if women don't have the right to go to court to say a device has harmed me, what is the incentive upon a device manufacturer to say maybe we need to take this thing off the shelf and do better?
So what is the Medical Device Guardians Act designed to achieve, and why is it called that?
The Medical Device Guardians Act was designed to achieve a result where physicians and their offices are encouraged, perhaps even mandated, to report adverse events to the FDA. This would codify a simple provision that's already in the Code of Ethics of the American Medical Association. So it's already a responsibility of all physicians. I think it should be codified in federal law as well. And I'll tell you why I think this is important. Because when I met Dr. Amy Reed, when I met my constituent, and she told me about what a medical device, the laparoscopic power morcellator, had done to her, and she went on to tell me that this device had been on the shelf for quite a long period of time, and that it harmed many other women. And that when she brought her complaint to the Food and Drug Administration, that she, albeit her physician, a mother of 6, a constituent of mine in Pennsylvania, that she was the first person ever to bring that complaint to the FDA. That no physician had reported it, no hospital had reported it, the manufacturer had not reported it, even though those individuals and organizations had reason to know in the 20 years prior or so, had reason to know that there were problems with this medical device. And so the question is, why is it the person who's in the least opportune position to provide that information or make that complaint? Why is it the patient? Why does this fall on the patient to provide the report to the FDA? It should be a doctor, it should be a hospital, it should be a device manufacturer. And so what the Medical Device Manufacturers Act is designed to do is to codify that simple provision in the Code of Ethics to make it clear that doctors and their offices should be reporting. It's an easy thing to do. In the 21st century, it could be an application downloaded on a smartphone, wired directly to the FDA. This is an example where more information is better because it gives the FDA more data to make decisions about what devices are good and are working and what devices are not working as were advertised.
Right, because it seems that the current system is insufficient by just requiring user facilities or hospitals and manufacturers to report the issues.
Current law that requires user facilities or hospitals or device manufacturers to report hasn't worked because women in this country have been harmed and women have died at the hands of a medical device that was dangerous and nobody bothered to tell the FDA. So whether it's legislators, bureaucrats, healthcare professionals, we can't sort of sit by and say, nothing needs to change here. Something needs to change. My first goal was wake people up to the issue, go down on the floor, talk about it, speak to my colleagues. The second is to meet with the FDA. We've done all these things. So now it is introduce a piece of legislation to require physicians and their offices provide that information.
So some critics say that the MDGA will not be cost neutral to the FDA and that these costs should be carefully considered. I guess the question is, what do you think would be the costs? And is this something the FDA can manage in its budget versus the cost of running the alternative system, which is a device surveillance measure?
The cost should be minimal. The cost should be de minimis, if anything. You're dealing with a bureaucracy. By the way, I've said previously, if the FDA needs additional resources to help protect patients, we should be doing that. We should be providing more funding for research, and I've supported that. Also funding, more individuals to make sure that the research and the drugs and therapies that result are safe. So I'm for that. But we're talking, with respect to the Medical Device Guardians Act, more information. I'm generally of the belief that more information is better. That in the information age, the challenge is managing the information appropriately, and you can do that with, I think, current staff and current information technology systems. So I know it's a common complaint. Every time somebody suggests an idea, the response of the bureaucracy is, I need more money to handle that. So, I'm listening to it. I'm not necessarily buying it. I do believe that the FDA has information systems that are antiquated, that are clumsy, that are not well put together, and they probably need to do a much better job with their current technology and information systems. But they're doing a poor job at managing the information that flows into the FDA. Is not an excuse not to improve, and it's not an excuse to try to do better for patient safety.
What responses have you received from your colleagues on the MDGA?
Well, it's a bipartisan bill, so that's good. It's a good start in the United States Congress to get Democrats and Republicans supporting it. The United States Congress is an institution with a lot of bills, thousands and thousands of bills introduced. And so this Medical Device Guardians Act was recently introduced. And so we're in the process of notifying our colleagues about what it is and what it does. There is an opportunity, I believe, in the 114th Congress, as the Speaker of the House has indicated an appetite to do the 21st Century Cures Bill before the end of December, before this Congress wraps up. So there's an opportunity to make some positive changes, and I would hope that we'd use that opportunity to talk to Democrats and Republicans about what would make this bill better and what would actually bring more co-sponsors and more supporters to the table. So
it seems like a rhetorical question, but what are the chances of it passing?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist. I think it's a great chance of passage. It passed overwhelmingly in the House. I wanted to see a better bill. I'll be honest about that. I thought we could have done more. But it passed with an overwhelming majority, went over the Senate.
Or the 21st Century Cures Act.
The Cures Act. Oh, I'm sorry, the Cures Act, right. And it went over the Senate, and they're working on it. But, getting back to the Guardians Act, you could very easily, if the cost is zero to minimal, which I think it is, very easily add the Guardians Act to the 21st Century Cures Bill, because it's all designed to help patients, and also assist the FDA in them doing their job.
Who is objecting to the Guardians Act, and what are they saying?
I haven't heard any objections yet. I'm sure there's an objection to everything that happens in Washington. There are some that probably don't think the federal government should mandate reporting. And I would say in the first instance that if the reports were flowing into the FDA without the mandate, we would understand that. In the case of the power morcellator, there were zero reports to the FDA until Amy Reed, stepped up and provided the first report as a patient. So something was wrong with the reporting. And then, the second point is, if the mandate leads to safer devices, better therapies, more cures, patient safety, and something positive in the healthcare profession, we shouldn't just back down because it's another mandate. If it's a mandate that saves lives, it's a good mandate.